The stream is acting weird.
No worries. Kara, I don't know if you were here, but I'm en route to City Hall. I'm pulled over on the side of the road, so I'm probably going to turn the meeting over to you while the presentation is happening. So
You guys can begin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Transportation and Commerce Committee meeting this morning. Today is Tuesday, March 26th, and we are meeting via webinar. And Madam Clerk, will you please call our meeting to order?
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Narayan.
Here.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Here.
Alderman Browning.
Present.
Chair Cone.
Present.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that wonderful roll call. Appreciate you. And next on our agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from Thursday, March 7th.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes as described.
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Aye.
Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Chair Cone.
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes.
Thank you. We do have 2 items on the agenda today. One is a presentation from the Regional Arts Commission, and the other one is a board bill sponsored by Alderwoman Velasquez. I'm going to ask, since we do have guest speakers for the presentation from the Regional Arts Commission, that we go ahead and dispense with those items on the agenda and head to the committee discussion first, and then we'll come back to Board Bill 239. So I know we have Nicole and Vanessa and a couple others from the RAC. I'm not sure who exactly we're going to kick it off with. I guess Vanessa, since you're the CEO over there, we'll start with you. And Alderwoman or Vice Chair Spencer, if you could just handle the meeting while I kind of finish my commute here, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Please take the floor.
Thank you all so much for having us.
They will have to be sworn in first.
Yeah, that was my mistake. I really should say. So the clerk will have to swear all of our speakers in. So if you don't mind.
So I can swear them all in at the same time that's going to speak. You want me to do it that way? Yes.
Thank you. Yes, if that would work for everybody, that way we can just get it all done at once. Thank you.
So we have Nicole Belford, Vanessa Cooksey, Tracy Morgan, and Angie Peters here. If you could please raise your right hand for me. I will need to see your faces. Let me see. Okay, thank you. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Belford, you're on mute.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you all so much for having us today. I'm excited to share. For those that are new to this committee, as a brief bit of background, in November of 2022, RAC was allocated $10.6 million of ARPA funds to support the recovery of the arts sector. And RAC is the largest public funder of the arts in St. Louis City and St. Louis County. Our resources were deeply impacted by COVID. We are funded exclusively from hotel motel sales tax. And so during COVID, we had a pretty rough time. And so the arts and culture nonprofit sector got together. 111 organizations advocated for resources. And we appreciate that the city of St. Louis responded favorably and allocated these dollars. So as part of the ordinance that was passed, we are required to come back to you to report out on our progress. So we are excited to share with you that we actually received the funds in May of 2023. And we started the first round of grants in August of 2023, and we completed the income replacement grant application and process and distribution by November. So we were able to distribute $3.4 million to artists and arts organizations in 3 months. This is RAC's first time with a federal grant of this size. I am also pleased to report that we just completed our first federal single audit with 0 findings. Our auditors are Armanino, and our audit leader said that she does 40 to 50 federal grant audits a year, and this was the first time that she's seen an organization get 0 findings for their first year. So we're pretty proud of our efforts. It has not been easy with the changing guidance from the U.S. Treasury, and working with the CDA has been very effective. And so we have been very good stewards of these ARPA funds, and we would like to share with you the results. Tracy's going to share screen. We've got a few statistics and data to share with you. And so thank you for, again, allowing us to share our results with you. So we'll go to the next slide. We were able to distribute $1,489,487 to 54 arts organizations in St. Louis City. On this next slide, you'll see by ward which organizations we were able to support, in addition to being able to fulfill our 2019 grants and make our organizations whole. We did have an open application process, and so you'll see that we had great distribution across the wards. Ward 11, of course, is where Grand Center is, so there's a high concentration of arts organizations in Grand Center, but we were very pleased that many organizations were represented across the city by ward. And now I'll turn it over to Tracy, who will share our artist. That's one of the things that makes RAC unique. We write checks to humans, and so we were able to use these dollars to support working artists in the community, and Tracy will share the results of that.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, Miss Vanessa, thank you. I am proud to be here to kind of share what our team and our what our organization has done for our artists. So as you can see by this slide, this is the amount of total eligible applicants and the total that were approved and by which ward that was. Let's see. So the first column to the left is eligible applicants, and then to the right is how many were approved in that actual ward. And then this slide shows the 8 reasons why we had to decline applicants, and those consisted of missing requirements, no proof of loss, or they were a county resident. As you know, this was only allocated to St. Louis City artists. They were missing proof of artistry, perhaps not a city resident during COVID, suspected fraud, and then there are a couple that submitted past the deadline and were Illinois residents. So we were not able to accept their applications. By artistic practice, I want to say there were at least 18 different practices, and this actually included all of the applicants. So there were a total of 296. And as you can see, the amounts, we had music, visual arts, media arts, folk arts, theater, dance, opera, so all across the board, literary arts. We were excited to see so many different, applications and so many different practices included. Excuse me. The total amount awarded versus the average. So in total, we were able to award $2,009,047 to our artists. And the average awarded, the lowest was $800 and the highest was $15,000, which gave us the average of $12,102.69. The total award rate amount provided per, QCT versus non-QCT. So our QCT funds were $1,679,199. And then those who were awarded funding that were not in a QCT was $329,848. Funding distribution by corridor, the central, which is considered Delmar to Highway 44, was 273,148. The north side corridor, which is considered north of Delmar, is 613,857. And the south side, which is considered south of 44, was a whopping $1,122,047. And that pretty much concludes the statistical part of this, the numbers that we are so very proud of. And this slide here just represents the testimonials we will be receiving from our grantees to be displayed on our website and just used for various purposes. You would have access to them as well, and for social media.
So it's very important to us that we are able to tell the story or have particularly for our artists, because this is a unique grant program that we were able to fund local working artists in St. Louis City who are residents. We did a survey, research survey called Creatives Count in October of last year, and learned that over 1,500 artists that were surveyed, 78% of those artists voted in the last national election, and 63% of them voted in the last local election. And so we just are so very proud of our artistic community here. Not only do they help make St. Louis fun and beautiful, but they are actively engaged in civic affairs. And so this investment that you all have made in artists is very, very, very important, and we thank you. So we'll pause here and see if there are any questions about this first round of money, and then we'd like to move into giving you an update on the next round of funds that we will be distributing.
Thank you. I will go through the committee by order of seniority here. First, I want to commend your work on especially getting the zero issues on the federal side of things. That is obviously no small feat. So we're really excited to have this sort of presentation here this morning. And I'll leave it to my colleagues here, starting with Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Spencer, and thank you all for the update here. Just one, I guess, question. Could you go back on the slides to the ward by ward breakdown? We just went through that pretty quick, so I wasn't able to catch it all.
For the artist, that one?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Got it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all your work on this. I know it's been a long road, and just want to thank you and all the artists that you support as well. And with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Alderman Narayan. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Just want to echo, actually, Brett, Alderman Narayan, you stole my question. Just want to say thank you to the Regional Arts Commission for doing this. I know 6th Ward did what it does and represented, so looking forward to working with you all on this whole process of picking artists and picking places in the next few months.
Thank you, Alderman Browning.
Thank you. Just again, want to say thank you to the Regional Arts Commission. I think that it's really telling that you had zero results from the audit. I know that is very difficult task, so congratulations on that. And I just personally know a lot of artists that were hurt when we went through COVID, and I'm so glad that you're out there doing the good work to keep the arts alive in St. Louis. So just very appreciative.
Thank you.
And Chair Cohn, have you been able to rejoin us?
I am here, and thank you, Vice Chair, for handling.
Chair Cohn, we are unable to hear you, but I'm assuming.
I was just saying, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was just thanking you for taking over in my stead, and then also echoing the sentiments of my colleagues, commending you all for your efforts with this first tranche of money that was appropriated over to the Regional Arts Commission, and all the wonderful work that you do supporting the artist community in St. Louis.
Thank you. Well, let's tell you some more good news. We'll skip on over and give you an update on the next round of dollars that we are distributing. And we're pretty excited about this. The St. Louis Mural Projects is designed for community collaboration, beautification, and artist support. And so the first thing I'm proud to share is that we received 74 applications for artists. When we opened the application, we communicated very clearly that there were 28 opportunities. We were doing funding two murals per ward for a total of 28 murals. And we received 74 applications in 100 locations. So these are businesses, building owners, who would like a mural in their ward. And so to have 28 opportunities and well over 74 artists and 100 locations, to me says that this is important to the residents of St. Louis. And so we're pretty excited about this. I do not envy you all for having to choose the artists and buildings for the wards, but this really does indicate that people want their communities to not only be safe, but they want them to be beautiful. And murals are a great way to tell the story of the ward. I think that this is a unique opportunity. This is the first time these wards have existed in our city's history. And so to have people come together and create a narrative and the visuals about the importance of the ward and the vision is really very exciting. So Tracy's gonna share with you the next steps and where we need your help.
All right, so yes, it's about to be a really fun process, you all, and I'm going to cover what that's going to look like. But first, I kind of wanted to talk about what the application status was. That our lowest request for the mural project was 1,700. The highest was 67,500. And the average request for each application was 34,587. And each ward will have at least 3 apps to review. We are in the process of putting everything together. And I will be in contact with all of you to start scheduling your artist review meetings, which will consist of myself, one of our project managers, and one or up to 3 public art specialists that will help, assist in the process. And also RAC's public art specialist, Chloe Smith. She's not here today, but she will be at the meetings with us. And so when we do start the meeting, this is what you'll see. You'll have your
Tracy?
ward indicated, and go ahead.
Yeah, you go the other way in the presentation. We're seeing the first slide.
Oh, no, this is the application review.
Oh, that's
Ward
the
1.
application review. My apologies.
Yeah, it just
be quiet.
No, it's okay. So they'll be broken up by ward, so you'll only see yours. And I'm just showing an example of one from Ward 1. Some of them have submitted the artist portfolio. Some have submitted the rendering, and this one right here submitted both. So we'll have the number. We will not have the name of the artist. This is a blind process, but we will have the artist's name. And that doesn't mean you won't recognize some of the work, but which is even cooler. But this is how it will look. We'll have the mural basis, if it's community engagement or historical or both. And then the mural size will be indicated, the mural type, whether it be adhesive to the building or painted directly on the building, and the actual budget of the application. And this is also where you'll need to think about, some artists did request locations, and that will also be included. If they did, some artists did not, and that's where we will pair those with the applications that were submitted by owners that were approved. So we would really need your help in knowing what those are, what those locations are within your ward, and you letting us know, is this something that could be adhesive? Can it be painted on? Do we need to contact the Historical Society, or do we need permits? Things of that nature. So those are some of the things that we'll talk about, outside of the artwork that would best represent the ward. And then important dates coming up. So we will have your review, and they actually start this week. So my plan is to send out your invites today via Calendly. So you'll have a link, you'll go to it, you'll pick whatever day is best for you. And then I'll start scheduling the other attendees that will need to be with us. And that will happen between March 28th through Monday, April 15th. And then we will start notifying artists April 15th. And that will take a week through about April 22nd. And then the mural painting period will start mid-May. So that way the ones that are chosen can get everything they need, insurance, permits. That'll be the time to get everything that we need wrapped up. And then we hope to have all of the murals dry by July 31st. And that's it, easy peasy. Do you guys have any questions for us about that process?
I'm sure there are. We will go through questions of the committee. I'll start with Vice Chair Spencer.
Thank you, Chair Cohn. Nice to have you back and presiding. No, I'm excited to see the proposals. Would it be possible? I think it might be helpful for me anyway to be able to see the locations before our meeting, especially if, you know, kind of thinking through feasibility, you know, and any additional information you can provide, whether or not the owner has submitted it, somebody else has submitted it on their behalf, if there needs to be communication with that property owner. You know, one of the things I'd like to do prior to kind of meeting and weighing in on those locations is look at the sites, see if they need tuck pointing, see if they need some additional you know, any kind of, you know, work to secure the building and thinking through those visibility sight lines and that sort of thing. So it would be helpful to have those the locations in advance.
Yep, I will send those out this week. And then that would also help us to determine, like, you could look at them and be like, nope, or yes, or so that would cut down the process and make it a little bit more efficient. So I'll absolutely get those locations out to all of you this week.
Okay, and then, you know, one of the things that I'd be willing to be helpful with, you know, as far as looking at whether they're in historic districts, if we had the full tranche of locations, what we could do is just kind of, you know, have them kind of looked at from that perspective and see if they're in a local historic district, if there's any restrictions on artwork of that kind. You know, some historic districts have some kind of requirements on that front, but we could just do that in one big list, and then that way, you know, we could have the planning division or another agency kind of just look through those addresses and determine whether or not they fit in those things, and then it might be helpful as well to prioritize. At least for me, I'm going to prioritize those like brick facades that have already been painted, you know, putting some maybe recommendations to maybe some of the new older people, thinking through, like, you know, I would much rather see artwork go on a very ugly building, obviously one with a lot of visibility, but, you know, that rather than painting, you know, sort of virgin brick, that would be my preference, of course.
So would you like the full list? Should I send that to everyone or just to you?
I guess what we could send it to the committee. I have no problem with that. And then what we could
Okay.
do is kind of forward it through our planning department and see if we couldn't just run those addresses and see, you know, identify those that are in, you know, what those historic districts look like. And then it might be helpful to sort of streamline the permitting process. You know, our permitting process is really done citywide, with the exception of those historic, you know, any specific historic, local historic codes. But, you know, as long as it's not advertising, you know, we should, I think, get a general buy-in from the building division as far as that's concerned, you know, as far as the mural versus advertisement goes. I know there's been, I know in my ward, we've had, you know, some confusion about whether or not it's advertising a business or if it's just artwork, and that can be contentious to some extent, but I think we should be pretty free and clear here with regards to not being an advertisement. So hopefully that can be done in an efficient across the board sort of sense.
Okay, wonderful. So we do have a spreadsheet of all of the locations and the wards that they are in. So that's already been categorized for you all with the photos. And then my team did go through and determine some historical, you know, locations. So that you guys, that would be amazing for you to cross-check and make sure that we have crossed our T's and dotted our I's. So that would definitely be helpful. So I will do that.
Awesome.
Hey Tracy, since this is the end, we've shown all our things, we can stop sharing so
Oh.
that way we can see everybody a little better.
I knew that. Thank you.
I know we talked about this briefly, and I don't remember if we came to a resolution on this, but I was curious if we had any, sort of agreements with the building owners to require that the murals stay up for a certain amount of time, that there's some safeguarding for the artwork so that we're not repainting it or seeing it be repurposed in some other way.
Yes, we are in the process of getting that contract finalized, and it will be between the building owner and RAC and the artist. And all of those elements are included, and we are going to run it past the CDA to make sure we've got everything that we need. And yes, that will be submitted to them.
And part of the budget process in the application was, or the budget in the application process did account for maintenance. So the artist will be responsible for checking on the artwork on a regular basis, making sure that it's okay. So that was built into the budget as well. And I think the minimum agreement amount is at least 3 years, or Tracy, is it 5 years?
Right now it's 3, but we can definitely revisit that if we wanted to make it longer.
That's
We
awesome.
wanted to make sure that it was in place at least through the ARPA, as long as we were responsible for ARPA money, which is through March of 2027.
That's great to hear. Is there any additional provision if there's like a major, graffiti or defacement or something of that nature that is outside of the control of the artist, to kind of maybe make sure that we're putting the artwork back in place?
Yes, that's also in there.
Yes,
Okay.
and we have some time limits around that, meaning, artwork has to be restored within 2 weeks, and or taken down, because, this is really important, and we don't want, if something happens to it, for that to be the visual for an extended amount of time. So yes, the contract does also cover that, and the artist, it's part of the grant agreement, would have to have a plan in place to make those things happen.
That's great. And my last question is really around the sort of site prep. Is there any funds available, if a building needs to be, kind of prepped in any serious way, whether that looks like tuck pointing or kind of, addressing the facade of the building?
So we do have that. It is listed in the budget for the artist, but that's also a discussion that should be had with the artist and the building owner. But we also ask that it not be any severe damage to the building or anything like that. So tuck pointing, I'm sure would be okay, but as far as bricks falling out or anything like that, we would ask that even in your application review, those not be considered.
Yeah, because we do have safety as a consideration. We don't want anybody painting, and some of these may be community experiences where the artist is inviting the community to help paint by numbers. And so the durability of the building, the safety is a consideration as well. And so yes, as part of the budget form, we really ask the artist to consider kind of pre-production, the production, and the post-production as part of their whole budget request.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thanks so much. I appreciate the additional insight, and I'll pass it on, pass the mic back to the committee chair.
Thank you. Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Chairman Cohn. Yeah, just I agree with a lot of what the Alderman from the 8th just laid out. I think one important thing certainly would be to make sure that this all makes sense with the Building Division and the Cultural Resources Office. I would just hate to see conflicts there that tie things up and delay things. Have there been ongoing discussions with Cultural Resources in particular?
Yes, I have reached out to, there's 2 people there that I've been speaking with that have been giving me some direction on, and I did submit some of the locations to them, but yes, there has been discussion with them.
Okay, perfect. And then, yeah, I'm really happy to see that there's been some planning for if there's graffiti or if the murals are defaced, because sadly, I feel pretty confident that's going to come up at some point. but glad to see that that it's accounted for. And great work again. Thank you all.
Thank you. And we appreciate your support, and we'll definitely be leaning on you to help us get these locations approved in your ward. And so we thank you for your partnership. This is where
Yes.
we need all your help.
Remember this face. You're gonna see a lot of her.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
I feel like y'all asked my questions again, and some I hadn't even thought of. I think, just making sure that we get everything right from the Cultural Resources Building Division side is really important so they can stay for the community for a long time. And I love Alderwoman Spencer's idea on just making sure that there's some longevity, right? And that the murals stay up. I don't think I have any other questions. I know that we've had a discussion or two about the process. So just, looking forward to seeing the list and the applicants from my ward. So, before we have that initial conversation, I can start incubating what might be, questions and what might be a good fit. So really excited to see this.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Browning.
Thank you. I'm just really excited about this opportunity. I live in Forest Park Southeast, which already has lots of murals. And so we get to experience the joy that brings every day. It gets to express our neighborhood values. It's very neat. And if you don't have murals in your neighborhood, I'm excited for you to have a chance to get murals in your neighborhood because it really does make things better. Tracy, it's kind of funny because I actually recognize the view outside that window. So hello from the 9th Ward. But let me just say that, I hear the concerns. I find that the murals at least in the neighborhood I live in, do not get defaced because artists respect other artists' work. I know that sounds strange, but graffiti artists are artists as well. And we find that even the bombers, the people who like to just tag things with their names, they tend to avoid the places where people have done purposeful art. So hopefully that alleviates some of my colleagues' fears. I'm very looking forward to doing this. I think, a lot of the concerns that Alderwoman Spencer brought up are fair, making sure that we're prettying up places that could use it. And not painting on necessarily brick that hasn't been painted yet will probably be a priority of mine as well, just because I do hate when we paint brick, but I also don't hate when it's a mural. So it's a little bit of both worlds. But again, just to really appreciate all the work you've done. I would love to review the locations ahead of time as well. I think that just ends up helping us make better decisions in the long run. So thank you again.
Thank you, Alderman. Just for my purposes, so, I know I've been in communication with a couple of the folks at the RAC, and, when you all reached out about locations, I started having those conversations with, members of my community, and they were not under the impression that they needed to get permission from the property owners, that, they just needed to get locations identified. And so I know they've been doing some work in the last week or two now to try and get the specific properties identified and permission from those property owners. So you all have a pretty tight deadline. I think I recall March 25th through April 15th as your time period that you hope to meet with the alderpersons. I don't know about my colleagues, but that's a very busy time for us right now. We're going into the last few weeks of our session, and the days are getting very, very long right now. So, if you don't already have time on our calendar, I would encourage you guys to reach out sooner than later to try and do so. But I was more so wondering if we do have other recommendations for locations in our ward, what's the cutoff for us to be able to provide that information to you all? Is it during those discussions? Or has it already been finalized? I'm just kind of wondering where we are specifically in that process.
So, as mentioned before, I will be reaching out to all of you this week, just to make sure that I can try to get on your calendars. I know you guys are super busy, but I will be in touch this week. And as far as the buildings go, we did close that on March 15th with the applications. But if you are just passionate about a location, we will not say no. So just
Okay.
definitely let us know.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then my neighbors also want to be included in the process of selecting an artist. So, I'm definitely wanting to support them and their, input in this process as well. So is the meeting that we have the meeting that I should have my neighbors who are involved in this attend, or would there be time for me to go back to them and share the information about artists and kind of go through that process as well?
It might be easier to share. So I remember getting your email about that, and I did reach out to some of the community leads just to let them know what was going on, and some of the neighborhood associations, and to definitely be in contact with your alderperson. So whoever you guys have that may want to be a part of this, I would definitely have your meeting and then take all those notes back, discuss with them, and then come back to us.
But so the meetings that you all are having with us, we're going to be reviewing the options for artists for
Yes.
the various buildings, right?
Yes.
That's one slide that you showed at the end of the presentation that had the examples of the murals and whatnot.
Yep.
That's essentially what you'll be showing each of us for, potential artists in our ward.
Yes.
Right? So would I be able to have access to that to be able to share with my, community partners, my neighbors, to have those discussions with them as well and get their thoughts?
Yes. So even before I set up the Calendly invites, I'm going to send you guys that full list of the, the full list of the buildings. And then I'm also going to send you your specific wards applications to review.
Okay, but the applications have those like photos.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you
Yeah,
for that
you're welcome.
clarification. Appreciate it. Okay, that's all the questions that I had. Are any other questions from members of the committee? I don't see any. You all did such a wonderful job. There's no more questions. So thank you all for joining us this morning. This has been a really wonderful update, and appreciate you putting the time and effort together for the presentation today. And I know, myself and my colleagues are really looking forward to seeing these murals pop up by July. That seems like a very ambitious timeline, but looking forward to it very much.
Well, thank you all so much for having us, and we'll see you all soon.
Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like we have someone on the attendee side that may have a question. You want me to move them over, Alderman Cone?
Sure. Or and could you just make sure that they're sworn in as well? And we don't really take questions from people who that's more testimony. So if someone has comments that they'd like to make.
Mr. Williams? Okay, he declined.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all, and certainly look forward to working with you in the months ahead.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Oh, could I just ask one last thing? The presentation that you shared with us today, was that emailed to the clerk already?
Yes, it's in the
Yes, we
drive.
sent it
It
yesterday.
is. Okay, perfect. I'll just make sure that the rest of the board also has access to that. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.
All right. And then we have one other item on our agenda today. I did have a conversation with the alderwoman last night. She indicated that she's not planning on taking a vote on this today, but wanted to have a hearing. Is that still your intention, Alderwoman?
I mean, thank you, Chair Cohen. I'd like to do my presentation and hear from the public. It looks like we've got quite a few people on here who have an opinion about this bill or would like to speak and weigh in. So
Sure.
I'd like to go through that and hear folks first and go through the presentation.
Okay. The floor is yours, Alderwoman.
All right.
Bill 239.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Cohen. Thank you, Vice Chair Spencer. Clerk, how would you like me to, I've got a presentation that it's like a PowerPoint presentation. Members of the committee, it is in your drive. Can I just go ahead and share my screen?
You sure can.
All right, y'all, so bear with me on the technological piece of things. It looks like you all can see it, correct?
We can.
All right. And let me just, every time I do this, actually. Sorry, I forget how to do this every time. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, what I'm gonna do today is obviously present here. I'm sorry, this thing is going. I'm just gonna keep it like that. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so what I want to do today is obviously I want to highlight the public comment on this bill. But first I want to just go through and give a high level, more or less high level overview. And then we'll go section by section. But the purpose of this bill is to, one, provide more opportunities to build the workforce of the future by supporting apprenticeship requirements for construction contracts under $1 million, and also aligns the current minority participation goals, actually, minority participation for women, city resident goals, and apprenticeship goals in line with the contracts that are over $1 million. And those contracts, the results of those contracts have been outlined in the most recent disparity study, but that is what this bill seeks to do. So again, the key goals of this bill is to bring those contracts, to bring apprenticeship hours to 20%, labor hours, that's how we're defining the hours performed by minorities and women to 25%, and the overall labor hours performed by women to 7%, and city residents. This also requires that the employer, the subcontractor, the contractor, provide healthcare standards that meet what is set in the Affordable Health Care Act. And one key piece of this is also an annual reporting of goals. So a question that I've been asked a lot is why? Why this? You know, and I'm of the belief that if we can't track it, we can't change it. So there's a history in the city of not only disparity studies, but a history of disparities. So really, this is another way for us to look at the work that the city is contracting and what we're doing in those areas. So section 1, it outlines the city projects, and it outlines that these contracts will basically apply to anything from $75,000 to $900,000. That's what this current bill outlines. What in the conversation I have had, there is some concern that this threshold might be too low. So that is one of the reasons that I've been having conversations and talking to folks, and this particular number is likely to change, but again, figuring out what that is something that we have to talk about with community, make sure that we have talked to all the different sorts of stakeholders involved. So it also covers public works contracts, so that would be by BPS or SLDC, again, for that $75,000 threshold. It would include city bonded projects and also abated projects. So projects that are where the city is granted tax abatements, TIFs. Basically, it does exclude residential or multifamily dwellings with 20 units or less, but for those abated projects. And again, right now the threshold is set at $75,000, but we've heard a lot of conversations about unintended consequences of that number, so that's something that we're looking at. So section 3 outlines the apprenticeship goals, and again, this aligns with what we already currently have in the city for contracts over $1 million. And that is minimum of 20% of contract labor hours performed by workers. And racial and ethnic minorities, and the bill obviously defines what those are. But here again, overall, 25% of labor hours performed by minorities and 7% by women. And again, these are numbers that we're already tracking for construction contracts over $1 million. City resident participation, 23%. Again, for contracts, we do this for contracts over $1 million. And then Section 6 outlines what essentially is the contract requirements. So as I mentioned, that this bill asks the contractors to provide the healthcare that meets the minimum value standard in the ACA. So basically, making sure that people have access to healthcare. The apprenticeship program, which, as I mentioned in the previous slide, is 20%. And, some key points to this that the contractors must participate or maintain apprenticeship programs. The programs need to have active registered apprentices, and that the program complies with all Federal Department of Labor regulations. And, one of the reasons why we had originally picked that settled on that $75,000 number, and again, that's something that we're looking at, but that is what the county does currently, and it also is where prevailing wage starts to be measured. And of course, these would also have all these contractors would need to provide prevailing wage. Section 7 is right now development and compliance. So the agency that's referred to in the bill is SLATE. And so they would be required to track and monitor the compliance of the ordinance, again, for those contracts that SLDC does not currently monitor that fall under the $1 million threshold. But really, it's between $75,000 and $900,000 is written. So these are just some more details about what the agency would be required to do as far as implementation and administration. I don't think this is much of a surprise, but establishing a system for how we monitor these goals, making sure that the contract language reflects implementation of goals, and basically just making sure that we follow the rules that we've set to both track and monitor and see where people or contractors are in the city is in meeting these goals. Right now we have Section 9 is non-compliance of ordinance. So failure to meet this would result in a written violation. The contractor currently has 5 days to cure a breach, and then after 5 days, punitive measures may be taken. Got a non-discrimination policy in here, an annual reporting requirement, which I think is important. If we're going to try and change things and make sure that we're being more inclusive, we have to make a commitment to reviewing and seeing how it's going. And this has a severability clause and an emergency clause, and it's codified. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take some time for questions if folks have any. I do want to say that the current disparity study, some of these goals we're actually doing really well in accordance with, not in accordance with, but we're doing what we are measuring. The city is doing well. Of course, it could be better, like anything else in life. But I think, what these standards have done and the efforts that we've made so far have put us in a place where there are less disparities, but nonetheless, there are obviously still some. So the goal of this is to, ensure that we continue to be inclusive and in how we do business and hold ourselves accountable.
Okay, is that all, Alderwoman?
That is my presentation so far. Like I said, I know that we have a lot of folks who want to speak, so I want to keep my version of my portion of the presentation relatively short so we can hear from the public.
Sure. I'm just going to, before we get into comments from the public, I'm going to go ahead and go through any questions that members of the committee might have at this point in time. And I'll start with Vice Chair Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alderwoman Velasquez. I have, so generally speaking, at the front end of the presentation, I'm a little bit confused. I know the language of the bill speaks to that 75%, $75,000 threshold, but you were mentioning that this would be designed to kind of target projects over $1 million. Can you speak a little bit about what where the target is and what we're attempting to address? I was looking at the disparity study and I was really unable to find the comparison of the city and county, and I was trying to look. I know it's like 250 pages or something, so I was struggling to kind of hone in on where, you know, what it is specifically we're addressing here.
Right. So, and so you have it later in links. I sent you a frequently asked questions document last night. So it delineates, so one of the previous ordinances, and I believe that is 70767, and I can send you the link. That is actually monitors these goals for contracts over $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we don't seem to have any clear tracking or enforcement of contracts under $1 million. So this ordinance is specifically from that $75,000 threshold to $900,000, which also does leave a little gap. So, I mean, we've got to figure out some of the math piece, but that is what this is addressing. So the disparity studies numbers, and their workforce numbers that they measure 2016 to 2021 are for contracts that are over the $1 million threshold.
Okay, so then
go ahead.
And then, so the 20 unit, can you speak to where that 20 unit comes in? Does this impact projects that are, so say it's $80,000 project and it is less than 20 units? Is this only for projects that are 20 units and above, or is it for projects that are all projects over $75,000?
So I believe what you're looking at is and I'm just going through my notes, an exclusion for that's for the city, the abated projects, I believe, the city bonded or abated projects, the residential exclusion requirement. And then right now it is construction contracts $75,000 or above, and contracts like related to if there's a project that receives an incentive, then this would, and it's under that $1 million, then right now this would apply to those projects as well. Does that answer your question?
Without an exception for projects under 20 units, right? Is that right?
Right. And I'm just looking at I'm trying to find out where I had that in my slide, but I believe that is correct.
I'm trying to figure out where the 20 unit comes in, because it's my understanding, typically speaking, when we're looking at residential, gosh, these affordable housing projects are running like $250,000, $300,000 a unit. So that $1 million threshold would be like 3 or 4 units. So I'm just trying to figure out where the 20 unit comes in. Is that on the?
That's on the abated projects. The abated projects that excludes it for residential single or multifamily dwelling units with 20 units or less for abated projects.
For abated projects, does that include any other, like the bonding projects or anything that, you know, like sometimes we've done a smaller than tax abatement, but you know, we'll buy the construction materials for a project to save them on the tax dollars for those purchases of construction costs. Does it include any, just trying to understand, I think part of the questions I'm getting from the development community is just trying to like understand the guardrails, excuse me, and what projects are included and are not included. So I'm just trying to get some clarity on some of those things for the so I can answer those questions.
Yeah, no, and I can go back. I mean, as I understand it, and it's in the definitions that it's under the abated projects. I would need to clarify if that also means that it also falls under the city bonded projects. I do believe that 20 unit and above has been in previous legislation for different sort of projects. So I can look at that, and we can definitely follow up and get some clarity on what, if it's beyond the abated projects, and why that is set at that number.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. One of the issues that I think could come alongside of something, that's kind of been identified, is that it's harder for smaller contractors to make the applications to even qualify. I know several minority contractors and other folks that are operating, but don't have those designations, and the sort of paperwork is daunting, and the sort of application process can be a hurdle for folks who, swing hammers and don't necessarily specialize in that, the paperwork side of things. So it can be kind of difficult for developers to meet those requirements, knowing that they've got folks who do this work, but they just aren't qualifying, and kind of helping folks get in that pipeline. I know it's been a frustration for those mid-sized developers to kind of fulfill those requirements. So wanted to uplift that concern as we move through this. And it would be helpful to, if we, like I said, I know we're referring a lot to this disparity study, but I was having a hard time finding specifically those comparisons. I did see, sort of we're not totally meeting the goals in the apprenticeship programs and some of the minority participations. And I was curious if we expand the number of projects that these requirements apply to without meeting those goals, do we have efforts underway to increase the bandwidth of those contractors that do help, make sure that we're meeting those goals, to be able to expand their operations and be able to further, serve additional project needs?
I think those are all great questions, and that has been, like I said, the county's current statute, and I know that one of the things that I'm going to mark on my list is to try and pull a city-county comparison, as much as we can do apples to apples. One of the concerns that I think you're going to hear today, and that I've heard, is that $75,000 threshold is really hard for some of those companies to meet. And so, raising the threshold, I think, is an important question. And we've been waiting on some additional data from city departments to try and come up with a data-driven number, right? To put that in there. And I think that is a valid concern. And as a person who, when I was a contractor, not a construction contractor, but there is at one point where I had my minority and woman business certification. And it was tough for me. And it was, I filled out a couple forms wrong and had some lovely people. I did mine through the state. Jefferson City helped me navigate that. So I think certainly it's a good question. What we don't want is to have unintended consequences of shutting out more minority small businesses that we're trying to help.
No, I think that's excellent. And I just want to, I think the intention here, I want to commend the intention and the effort here, to, I think especially when it comes to apprenticeship programs, increasing the pipeline, creating paths for employment and career paths for our young folks is so vitally important to not only the development, the community in general, but to our overall economic, health of our community, and being able to kind of establish those pipelines. So I think the intent here, I want to commend you on that. I think, I'm grateful that we're kind of hearing from all different kind of angles to make sure that we're going to be able to meet those goals, and that we're preparing folks and organizations to be able to do that, and that we're not going to have taking a look at the unintended consequences as well, so that we're taking a pretty round approach here. So thank you for hearing my questions, my concerns, and I'll pass the mic back to the chair.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Good questions as always.
Thank you, Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Chairman Cohn. This is a complicated subject just in general. I know, in the past when we've looked at changing things with apprenticeship programs, it's always been, the unknown unknowns are what really complicate things. But I think it's really, really important to make sure that that we capture and understand the data on what's happening with these projects between $75,000 and $1 million, because that's a huge portion of the projects that are done throughout this city. I think this is certainly a step in the right direction. That there may be some concerns that we can address, but I think without having a working understanding of that data set, we're gonna fall short of the goals set out in this piece of legislation, which is ultimately to increase women and minorities' participation in this type of workforce, and ultimately to create middle class existences for those folks. So I commend you on your work. I'm supportive of this. I think any issues that come up can be addressed, should be addressed, but I've seen before when people have kind of made a boogeyman out of things and said, "Oh, any changes to this are going to, just be devastating," and that they haven't been. That they've been actually pretty helpful to people. And so I would encourage anyone who has some concerns to look at what we've done in the past with apprenticeship programs and how they have actually increased the number of women and minorities in these fields. And again, this is a pathway to a middle class life that may not exist for people otherwise. And I remain committed to trying to increase the number of people who can live that kind of American dream life. So I commend you, and with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Alderman.
Thank you. Alderwoman Velasquez probably doesn't have questions of herself, so I'm going to move along to Alderman Browning.
Thank you. And thank you to Alderwoman Velasquez for bringing this forward. I agree with my colleagues' previous comments. I think it's really good to understand where we are when we're trying to understand where we're trying to go. And so I look forward to continuing to work on this further, and just really appreciate the work that's gone into this and the work that will go into this. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, with that, we'll open it up for public comment. I'd like to remind folks that this is just for your comment, whether you're supportive or opposed to the bill. I would like to make sure that we have remarks to 3 minutes, and then everyone who is wanting to testify will need to be sworn in by the clerk. So we'll go ahead and Madam Clerk, if you could please handle that, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, did the sponsor have any speakers as part of the presentation before we move on to public comment?
I don't believe she did, but Alderwoman Velasquez.
I don't, I think I don't have anybody, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to, can everyone face, we will need to see your face. Everyone who's giving public testimony.
So, Madam Clerk, did people register since it's online?
That portion I do not see. I can check with Kennedy, but for all the people that I see who are here, they're just being asked to be transferred over.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Trania, we will not be able to take your testimony without seeing your face.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to turn on. You can go to the next person. I'm trying to get the camera working. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, it looks like we have a couple of other people. Oh, you're transferring them over.
And just for clarification's sake, I don't know if there was an option to register, but folks don't have to register beforehand to testify.
Okay, so what I'm doing is they're all coming in, so I'm trying to make sure that we can, who all wants to testify is going to get transferred over all at one time. Okay, so it looks like okay. Okay, so everyone turn their phone off of mute. We will need everyone to raise their right hand. Thank you. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. So we're going to start with Katura Robinson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Katura Robinson. I own G2 Wrecking and Hauling, and I am opposed to the bill BB 239. I applaud the effort of the attempt to address some of these very often severely overlooked areas, but unfortunately, the approach is an attempt to be a blanket approach. This is not an issue that we can fix in one bill. I do feel that the bill will unfortunately allow some of us to suffer, as myself. While we're trying to include minorities, we're really excluding minorities. And listening to some of the comments from some of the alder persons, one of the things that stood out for me is that while it's great to have the approach of apprenticeships, and we all want that because we need that pipeline, but unfortunately myself, I am a small business owner. I am a woman, I am African American, and I just recently won a contract with St. Louis City for $80,000+. So if this was the situation, and if this was to be passed, I would not have been able to win that bid. So we have to consider that. I have less than 5 employees right now, but I know that I am steady growing, and I could even today handle a couple $100,000 in contracts if it were to be awarded to me. So in our scope of work, we have to remember that counting us out, we as small business owners, we don't want to just be on someone else's job. We want to be the lead on our own jobs. And the way that this is currently set up, it sounds like we would only be able to be under other contractors. And we should have the affordability to not just be under contractors, but lead our own contracts and our own job. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Clinton McBride.
Good morning here. Clinton McBride. I'm the Government Affairs Director for Labor's Local 110. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you so much for giving me a few minutes to speak with you this morning regarding what I view to be incredibly important legislation. So several months ago, a disparity study was released that was actually commissioned by both the city and the county to compare apples to apples for the first time that we've ever done it in that method. And what we were able to glean from that is that there are some huge issues here. One being that In the city of St. Louis, we do not apply workforce goals to any projects under $900,000. $900,000, that is huge. And that is a problem. That's one of the major recommendations coming out of the disparity study, is that frankly, those goals need to be applied to a much larger swath of projects. And that is one of the primary things that this legislation actually seeks to do. It reduces that threshold from 900,000 all the way down to 75,000. Again, in keeping with what the disparity study did recommend. So I think that, there are other aspects here as well that have already been addressed. The MBE and WBE goals, the apprenticeship utilization goals, and the city resident goals. City resident, that's already in law. The MBE and WBE goals are in law as well. I will say that about 3 years ago, St. Louis County adopted something that is very, very similar to this with a $75,000 threshold. And when you look at this most recent disparity study, again, this for the first time compared apples to apples, St. Louis County actually outperformed St. Louis City when it comes to minority inclusion on construction projects. So I think the proof is in the pudding in that regard. I do also think that other municipalities and political subdivisions throughout the state have adopted similar policies. You can look over to Jackson County, for example. They recently adopted one, and it doesn't have any threshold in it. So if there's 1 penny of public dollars in it, these rules would also apply. I think that, especially when we look at the SLDC component, right? And all of it, frankly, it's all dealing with tax dollars in some way, shape, or form. And the people paying those taxes need to have some way to get a benefit out of the taxes that they're paying, right? I need to be able to have a job so I can pay taxes to provide the incentives that the developers are seeking to build these projects. I mean, that is something that we should be requiring. When it comes to health insurance, construction is a dangerous job. It's outdoors. People get sick, people get hurt. They need to make sure that they've got something to fall back on, and we're not having to provide additional charity care that stems out of, projects created by our tax dollars. I think that, whenever we look at the prevailing wage on incentivized projects, that bill was passed 4 or 5 years ago. We got very similar pushback whenever we had an asbestos piece of asbestos legislation dealing with how asbestos is abated, making sure our neighborhoods aren't contaminated. We got similar pushback on that. When we dealt with the way that lead is remediated to keep our children and our neighborhoods safe, we face similar pushback on that. And the sky has not fallen on any of these. And frankly, again, when we look to St. Louis County, they are actually doing better when it comes to inclusion activity. So, I know I've only got 3 minutes. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but, I said it once and I'll say it again. I do think that, the proof is in the pudding. And sometimes, when you have various departments that maybe aren't doing things in the way that, frankly, they should be, anything under $900,000 not having any goals is not how things should be done. And sometimes, when you're asking for a solution, you can't ask, the problem for the solution, essentially. So sometimes we need to look outside the box and find ways that we can do things to move the needle in a meaningful way, even if it does, create work for folks, on the administrative side of things. These are things that should be done, and just saying, well, this isn't how we do it, that's not really an appropriate answer. I don't want to hear why we can't do things. It's, let's find the solution and let's get things done. And I think that's what we're doing here. And frankly, I think this does put us on the right side of history. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Mr. Malcolm Thompson.
Yes. Thank you. And I am my name is Malcolm Thompson, owner of T&T Contracting and acting chair of MOCAN. And I am in a unique position because this bill may help my company because we are union now. But thinking back on how we started this bill, I think it's going to knock a lot of contractors that were in my position maybe 4 or 5 years ago, to where the city of St. Louis is their refuge to be able to go and get work and to do work. The goal is to make the contractors grow. I think the goal is to make the contractors grow so they could bring along all the apprentices and all the people that come with them. But I think if this bill goes into action, it's going to widen the pool of competition that some of these smaller contractors have. And like I said, I can use myself as an example. If this was in place, some of the city contracts that I had, I would have never been able to get to the point to where I can be union now. So that's one of my concerns. I do think there's good points on both sides of it, but I do think that we have a lot of good city companies that are using good city residents, you know, and we don't want to knock them out of it to where they can't compete anymore. If you think about those companies that can compete on the projects that are $1 million plus, they have the option to come down and compete on the smaller projects. Most of the projects that are doing 75, most of the contractors that are competing on the projects that are 75 to 900,000, they don't have the option to go and compete for those $1 million contracts. So I think there's some good in it, but I do think some adjustments have to be made to make sure that a big portion, which is the small contractors, and a lot of small contractors are the ones that are employing a lot of these guys in the city. A lot of these guys in the city, they come from these smaller contractors. So I don't want us to attempt to help out a situation and just open up a gap and hurt another situation. So that's my comment on it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, we have Mr. Jeffrey Wade.
Good morning, everyone. So I am the executive director for the Asian American Chamber of Commerce, St. Louis. I strongly support Board Bill 239, introduced by Alderwoman Daniela Velazquez. This bill is crucial for our city and our chamber members, particularly benefiting our Asian American Pacific Islander community. The AACC also serves as a diverse constituency, representing various sectors within the AAPI business community. So our mission is always to foster growth, economic development, and collaboration within this vibrant demographic, which is essential part of St. Louis cultural and economic fabric. So this bill aligns with our goals by setting minimum standards to improve the availability of trained and diverse construction workers and employers. It acknowledges the importance of diversity in the workforce, which is central to economic efficiency and community prosperity. So moreover, ensures that public works and other city-supported projects reflect our community's diversity, providing fair opportunities for all. So this bill not only promotes workforce diversity, but also advocates for inclusion and economic equity, principles that resonates with the AACC's mission. And so by supporting this apprenticeship and ensuring participation goals for minorities and women, it lays a foundation for sustainable community development and economic growth. So in conclusion, Board Bill number 239 represents a step forward in creating a more inclusive, equitable, and prosperous St. Louis. Benefits not only the AAPI community, but the entire city by fostering diverse and skilled workforce. The AACC is proud to endorse this initiative, recognizing its potential to enhance the economic vitality and cultural richness of our city. And to add to that, I always feel that transparency is vital, and sometimes the lack of trust is sometimes the biggest issue moving forward in a lot of different things. So as I listen to this bill and I listen to some folks here talking about it, I think having that transparency will help move the city forward. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Levy Lovell.
Thank you. My name is Levi Lovell. I represent the Missouri AFL-CIO and the St. Louis Labor Council. I want to speak in favor of Board Bill 239 today. I believe this bill will provide economic opportunity for lots of folks. It'll adjust the cause of, a more economic and diverse workforce. In organized labor, we speak about, economic development and providing opportunity. And this ensures that residents of St. Louis working in St. Louis projects will have quality jobs, will have quality health care, and we'll be capturing a larger slice of the pie on work that, will include and advance inclusion and equity. At the Missouri AFL, we have a program, the Missouri Works program. And in St. Louis, we have the BUD program, the Building Union Diversity, where we try to include women and BIPOC people into the union trades. And that's core to our mission. And I also believe that Board Bill 239 is core to the mission that we agree in advancing a quality job and a quality way of life for folks. So I urge you folks to support Board Bill 239, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I just want to remind people as they're testifying, the clerk did ask you to specify where you reside. And if you could please indicate either your ward or your zip code or the block that you live on, it would be very much appreciated. I would also add that if you're testifying, I think it would be beneficial if you could email the clerk or myself with your contact information in case any of the members of the committee have follow-up questions for you after the hearing. Thank you.
Just to interject, clerk, I think there are a couple more people who've got their hands raised to be moved over when you're at your leisure.
Yes, I'm gonna move them all over once we finish with this first round.
You're the expert.
I would appreciate making those comments through the chair for future reference. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mr. David Jackson.
Good morning to the committee, and I do commend Alderwoman Bell. I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, Valdez. However, I oppose the bill as it is written now. I think the testimony that Malcolm Thompson just gave validifies that there needs to be close scrutiny of the apprenticeship tied to this bill. Reason being, most of the minority firms here in the city of St. Louis are not registered as a minority firm for one reason or another, and not through the city airports program. And also, you cannot compare the disparity studies between the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County. They're totally different. As a matter of fact, the county does not even follow compliance with their contracts and projects. The city of St. Louis has a compliance program. However, they're very weak on addressing and completing that compliance program. I can understand where Alderman Nirvana said that these are some complicated issues. It really is. The firms that are not certified with the city of St. Louis will be hurt with this bill, just like Mr. Thompson says. And we don't want to forget those mom and pop, small minority and women-owned companies that are not affiliated with the union. This is the same similar program up under Mayor Francis Slay. It doesn't help the union, but what it does, it hurts the minority firms that are not certified with the city of St. Louis, like I said, for one reason or another. And so we ought to consider those firms when we're talking about apprenticeship programs and workforce. The good thing about it is we're talking about large projects over 75,000, and the only way you can guarantee a minority workforce is to hire minority companies. And so that can be done through this bill, but the bill hurts those firms that won't get certified. And so I would like to ask the alderperson to maybe speak with people of these other minority organizations to see how the bill can be fine-tuned to address the apprenticeship and the workforce associated with those minority firms that are not certified or will not get certified. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Gabriel Cardenas.
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Gabriel Cardenas. I'm the owner of Missouri Constructors. I also sit on the board of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and I sit on the board of the Construction Forum. I am in favor of this bill. I do have some questions that I think we need to discuss. The main one is the apprenticeship program. I do agree with some of the comments being made. I think minority participation and women participation and apprenticeship participation, those are two separate things. Apprenticeship is to anybody that just wants to get in the trades, which I think the Hispanic Chamber and also Construction Forum have been doing a great job of creating the awareness that we need more young people to get in the trades. So I do think we sit down and talk about that. As for the minority participation, women participation part, I do think that this is a great thing. I am a certified minority company through St. Louis Airport. And yes, it is a very daunting task. There are many programs, including at SLDC, that try and help companies get certified. And I think that is a great thing. The Hispanic Chambers also has created a program to help Hispanic companies become certified, and also talk with the unions so we could also be able to get them in the union so we can participate on these bigger projects. I think the only way for us to grow is to have these goals in mind, because I feel like if we didn't have some of these goals, we would be left behind. So the more goals we have, the better it's going to be. And yes, it could be daunting, it could be scary or risky, but until we set that tone, until we set those goals, until we set that standard, we're never going to change. So I am in favor of this, and I do support it, and I hope that we can come together and get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Eddie Hassan or Henson. Hello?
Yes, are you there?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, yes, Eddie Hassan. I most certainly think that there need to be some work done on the bill. Couple of things. I'm most certainly supportive of inclusion and participation, but we have a lot of projects on the table, and if we try to expand, monitoring on these smaller projects, then we lose sight of the effectiveness that we're trying to have on the larger projects. I most certainly don't want to diminish inclusion, because I'm one who have been supportive of inclusion for a number of years. As it relates to the apprenticeship programs, and having to have an apprenticeship program, that strictly deal with the union itself. I want people to understand, when we talk about apprenticeship programs, you're talking about union control programs. And the unions have been involved in seeing this participation for a number of years, and the unions have not done a good job, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of recruitment of minorities and women in the trades over the last 20 years. So when you were talking about being able to reduce it down to the point that we're saying that apprenticeship programs, not just training, not just Hispanics going out being able to talk about hiring people to come in, you're talking about now being enrolled in an apprenticeship program that the unions control. And my point is that I don't know if that's a good idea or not. I think that the language needs to be changed if we're talking about being able to talk about including African-American and women workers on these projects. Now, I most certainly support benefits and prevailing wages, and perhaps maybe we could talk about the language that we include in there, but I don't think that reducing it down to $75,000 and giving the union the ability to be able to control, if you will, the number of apprentices and people that get hired in these projects is the right thing to do. So I think we need to rethink that. You know, I think that the jobs that's taking place in this particular environment, in this particular area of work, is a springboard for startup companies, like Malcolm indicated earlier, and I think that's very important. Okay, and I also think that we need to also have, you know, a wage requirement on these projects to the point that workers are not getting duped or paid under the amount that they should be paid. So I think that we need to do some a little bit more work on the bill itself. I think that perhaps we could have reporting requirements and not necessarily monitoring requirements on these projects. So I think that we need to just look at it real hard and come up with a good workable solution for the work. We want to be able to most certainly have more opportunities for African Americans and most certainly city residents on these projects, because we're talking about now city projects. We're not talking about county projects. All this is city projects with city incentives and tax-based stuff that's taking place in the city. So, and one thing I'd like to ask a question, because as we talked about, I heard the Asian American individual talking about it, but I've been looking for Asian American contractors, and I was not able to identify any of them in terms of contractors. So I'm trying to understand, they supporting a contractor type situation, and I'm trying to identify Asian American contractors, what I could not find. That's just a question. Who are the Asian American contractors? Because we were looking for some. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Next, we're going to have Zach. We will need for you to state your first and last name, please, and your ward.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my technology here. Hi, my name is Zach Hamilton. Not very good with wards, but we're 63112 is our zip code. I agree with some of what I've heard here so far about supporting the what I'm going to call the intent of the bill. But as a contractor, a minority contractor that's here in the city, I think there's certain aspects of it that would actually prevent us from actually being able to get some city projects. We currently have 25, 30 employees, 90% of them are minorities, and 90% of them came through a training program that wouldn't qualify in this instance. And they're working, and 100% of them are making living wages, and we're able to do that. But we wouldn't be able to get any of these city contracts. So the minority participation, of course, is great. The training, of course, is great. All those things, the stated goals are great, but I think the execution of them, the way the bill is written, will hinder contractors like myself and others in the city to actually who are, in my opinion, who are actually doing the work, and we're getting the city residents and the minorities and the women employed. But this bill would hinder us from doing that with city contracts. That's all.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Ms. Shay Jones, Yafet El-Amin. We need to swear you both in before you begin. Can you raise your right hand for me? So I see Yafet, but I do not see Shay Jones. Shay Jones, if you are there, we would need to see your camera, and we would need for you to swear in. If not, you will not be able to testify. Okay, so we're going to go ahead on with Ms. Yafet El-Amin. If you raise your right hand for me, thank you. Do you affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I can't hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. I just want to turn up my screen. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Yafet El-Amin. I am the Executive Director of MOCAN Construction and Contractors Assistance Center. I am also a lifelong city resident living in the 10th Ward under Alderman Shamim Clark Hubbard. However, our facility, MOCAN Construction Contractors Assistance Center, is on Natural Bridge, and our zip code is 63112 under Alderwoman Laura Keys. And again, members of the committee, MOCAN Contractors Assistance Center is here today to stand in strong opposition of Board Bill 239, committee substitute as it is written today. However, MOCAN has a long history with the city of St. Louis. MOCAN, in essence, in 1989, sued the city of St. Louis for discrimination of minority contractors and female contractors, and that lawsuit established a consent decree with the establishments of the first Executive Order 28 that affectionately was known as 25 and 5 for minority and female participation. That was done under Mayor Slay and continued to stay in effect and upheld by Mayors Bosley, Slay, and Cruzen. MOCAN is no stranger to partnering with the city of St. Louis. Under Mayor Slay's administration, we also were the first entity to establish workforce goals in the city of St. Louis with Executive Order 75 that established 25% minority, 5% women, 20% city residents, and 15% apprentices on all 100% city-funded goals that came as a byproduct of Proposition S. In 2012, we further worked with the mayor administration to establish the Executive Order 46 that expanded workforce goals to now be on all TIF-funded projects in preempting the Cortex and projects like IKEA. So from there, countless of projects have went into effect to fulfill these workforce goals. MOCAN continued to work with the city in 2017 as that was the first time in over 20 years that the city had enacted another disparity study that was done by Mason Tillmans and Associates, and now worked along with the city in their new disparity study completed by Keene Independent Research Group. Although we have a long-standing history with the city of St. Louis and partnering with its legislative bodies, and now exists 50 years this year in advocating for DEI matters, we were presented this bill yesterday. And fortunately enough, our partner organization, the NAACP, immediately gave us this bill around 12 p.m. I say that to say, as a lead advocate organization for minorities and females, we were really disappointed that we had not had any contact, nor as we represent primarily minority contractors, African-American contractors, and the NAACP as well, African-American entities, that we had no contact or communication or knowledge of this bill. However, even though today we were afforded an opportunity and thankful to Alderwoman Velasquez for being able to meet with her at 5 p.m. last night, we do support her desire and intent to ensure transparency, monitoring, and tracking on all contracts under $1 million. However, we do not believe that this is the way that this is achieved. It is our opinion that this is a backdoor PLA that's coming in as a veiled horse and a mechanism to increase transparency and compliance. It is not the need to utilize a PLA as a way for transparency and compliance. Currently, the city of St. Louis just completed its disparity study. However, within the disparity study, it mandates and identifies various mechanisms that could be utilized to achieve participation. We would encourage that this bill look at if in fact there is any intent to have this done through apprenticeships, to take the goal language from the disparity study and then make it across the board for all apprenticeships. So if the thought is that one, apprenticeships is the way, and you've heard countless of companies come on this Zoom today, there are non-apprenticeship companies and even some that are now apprenticeship companies saying that if they had to do apprenticeships when they first started, or when 5 years later, that their companies would not be in existence today. MOCAN since 1999 has trained minority and female workers in the workforce. This bill references the Construction Prep Center, in which we founded in 2000, that operated into 2024. The Construction Prep Center is no longer in existence, even though the bill references it as an entity to work for on workforce. It should be replaced with MOCAN's pre-apprenticeship program because we replaced the CPC in 2015. But it also speaks to the bill sponsored lack of understanding. It also speaks to the Access program. None of these programs are even in existence today and have been out of existence for more than 7 years. Speaks to the intentions of the sponsor, but also the ignorance of the sponsor as it relates to even entities that are servicing the minority community as it relates to workforce, because both of these entities have been out and closed down at least 7 years ago. We believe that forcing these companies into apprenticeships would also significantly hurt our pre-apprenticeship graduates. Since 2014, MOCAN has graduated more than 551 individuals. I also see current Alderman Rasheen Ulrich, and when he was a state representative, he provided more than $500,000 of funding for our organization to get more minorities and females into the trades. This particular bill passage would ensure that many of our graduates will not be able to be employable because not all of them meet the criteria for apprenticeship graduates. Currently, as an example, the electrical apprenticeship mandates that you either have a C average in geometry and algebra. So even if it was 20 years ago and you didn't take algebra or didn't take geometry, you can be an electrical apprentice today. However, non-union electrical programs will give those same people an opportunity to participate. So we believe that our graduates and many other similar programs would be challenged in receiving quality job opportunities if in fact they are placed and having to be forced into apprenticeship programs. In closing, I would also say that unfortunately, even though historically unions have been a vehicle for entry for minorities and people of color, that the construction trade unions have historically been discriminative of minorities and females, with current overall industry numbers cumulatively reflecting less than 10% minority and 4% female over the last 30 years. That says something. In a city that has a population of more than 55% African Americans, that have had a gold program for more than 30 years, that the bulk of the work being union apprenticeships and union affiliated has not achieved the diversity that we need. Currently, and I do have to speak to this,
Yes. I'm sorry. We're trying to keep testimony to 3 minutes. I'll let you wrap up.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, and I will wrap up. Thank you so much for your diligence.
Of course.
However, and it was indicated and should be noted that the Hispanic business disparity in our last disparity study was identified as 2%, and the Asian company disparity was identified as 0.5, which in essence statistically shows that there were very few companies to even create a goal for, and that African-American business disparity was identified as 21% even after 30 years. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well as the members of the for allowing for us to speak to our concerns about the bill. We again ask for the committee's consideration in not moving this bill forward, as the full apprenticeship will hurt minority companies and workers in the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cohn, we have 4 more people who just signed on. I would need to swear them in. That is Shay Jones. She's back on. We would need to see your face. Frank Jacobs, Sean Voss, and someone from St. Louis JATC. If you're there.
If anyone who is interested in testifying can please make sure that you have your camera on and that the clerk is able to see both your face and your hand in order to swear you in. And again, I would like to just reiterate that we're trying to keep testimony to 3 minutes for each speaker, and that when you are called upon to testify, that you indicate your place of residence, or at least your zip code or ward that you live in. And if you could also please send me or the clerk an email with your contact information in case anyone on the committee has follow-up questions, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so right now, let's see. Okay, so of those names, the only face that I'm seeing, I guess, who wants to testify, it's going to be Mr. Sylvester Taylor.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please raise your right hand for me? Do you affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You may proceed.
First, I never thought I'd say this, but I absolutely love Zoom right now. I'm fighting a bug, and I'm so happy this is not in person. I'm here to speak in I think this is a fantastic bill. Alderwoman Velasquez, thank you so much for bringing this forward. My name is Sylvester Taylor. I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers and for the National Electrical Contracts Association. And to be perfectly honest, the people that everybody was talking about, I was that apprentice 34 years ago. I've been an electrician now. In June, it'll be 34 years. And my first project was because they held up funding on the convention center for women and people of color. And when they did that, I went to work. That was the first time I stepped foot on a construction project. And I haven't let up since. I think this bill speaks volumes. You know, a lot of times when you get a city project, a lot of people know, especially in our non-union sector, that if they don't have work, when that job's over with, guess what you get to do? You get to go find another job. And having people in registered apprenticeship programs, it is absolutely fantastic for all of us. I love the fact that we're even having this conversation. I know some numbers that was thrown out earlier about the amount of women and people of color in registered apprenticeship programs and in the building trades in general. I can tell you, being on the ground, being boots on the ground, my apprenticeship used to hover around 8 to 12%, and it did that for 30 years. We're somewhere close to about 27 to 28% now, and some of our apprenticeship classes have topped 30%. We are trending in the right direction. And I like the fact that we're having these conversations because our competitors don't have to hold to the same standards that we have to. We're not having our non-union competitors come in and talk about their numbers. I applaud this bill. I can't wait to see it go into effect, and it will, to me, target because, and I say that because this whole thing is intentional. Because the building trades in general, up until probably about 20 years ago, was intentional in the exclusion. So now we're holding our feet to the fire. And I love the fact that this is being totally inclusive. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, I'm going to go ahead on and swear who I can see. I can see Ms. Shay Jones, so I'm going to go ahead and swear you in. Could you raise your right hand for me, Ms. Jones? I can't hear you.
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yes. Raise your right
great.
hand for me, Ms. Jones.
Alrighty. There we are.
Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
All right, thank you. So I appreciate everyone's time, and I understand how important this bill is for everyone. I am a current construction apprentice, and so I am in support of this bill. I think it's very important that as women, as minorities, as city residents, we have more visibility and more access to the opportunities that lie in the construction world, especially if these jobs are taking precedence in the city. But as I listen to the input from all of the attendees, I do understand how it can put small businesses in more of a crunch. But at the same time, construction is a very involved industry and safety is paramount. And I think that adequate training and introduction and understanding of safety through and through is extremely important when it comes to the overall result of any project. But at the same time, I would like to say that maybe it sounds like the focus for the smaller businesses participation, maybe it should focus a little less on the financial brackets, and maybe it should focus more on safety brackets, and it should allow them to have access to jobs that maybe are a lot safer for their employees, since they do operate on a level of a little less training, rather than it being more about the financial opportunities. But for myself as an apprentice, I see the growth in women. I see the growth in minorities into the unions, into these apprenticeship programs that are very involved and are very immersive. And it does make a difference in the turnout of the employee, which makes a difference in the type of people that you have running these jobs and the overall effectiveness and the overall complete and safety aspect of the jobs in general. And so I am in support of the bill. I think that this is good for our city. It's good for city residents. It's good for minorities and women being in the trades. But I also see how it puts smaller businesses in a crunch. And so I think that with some adjustments, it could balance more and work out for everyone.
Thank you. Next, we have, as I can see on here, if I could have Mr. Adolphus Pruitt show his face. Thank you. If I can have, I see Mr. Neil Richardson, I see Raymond. I'm going to swear those three in since I can see your faces, which is telling me you want to testify. So if you could raise your right hand for me. Turn off your mute. Okay. All right. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
That's more true than those union people.
Well, thank you so much. So I will go ahead and take the testimony. I see Mr. Richardson has been on here a while, so I'm going to take his testimony first, and then I'll take yours next, Mr. Pruitt.
Thank you, Secretary, and thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak today. I have had the opportunity over the last several days to speak with Alderwoman Velasquez in regards to this board bill. As SODC, we are the economic development arm of the city of St. Louis that works in partnership with city departments. We are not a city agency. We are separate 501c4. However, we are responsible for managing the compliance on projects that receive tax abatement and any incentives, and the monitoring on projects that are over $1 million associated with those various programs. We also partner with the airport, St. Louis Airport, as well as the county on the certification process. And we also partnered since my tenure at SLDC. I believe the disparity study even began prior to me beginning my role almost 3 years ago in June of 2021. We worked in partnership, as was stated here, for the first time in our history with St. Louis County to ensure that our methodology in which we conducted our monitoring for compliance was in alignment. However, we will have different goals based on the disparity study, but we wanted to ensure the methodology was aligned and effective. As we have moved forward, again, spending almost 2.5 years on the disparity study, working with keen independent research, we've just finalized our public comment portion of the disparity study and was planning to take the disparity study forward to the full Board of Aldermen for their review and to ultimately get it recognized and adopted by the city of St. Louis as we move forward to updating our ordinances that we are regulated to monitor 70767 and 71094. But then also ensuring that we update our certification process to align with the new compliance goals to make it more efficient and effective for our city of St. Louis women and minority-owned business enterprises. So as we're going through this process, it's very important that we take our time to really understand the full breadth of the impacts. From the disparity study itself, it mentioned not only do we need to improve workforce goals as it relates to city residency and apprentice, but most importantly, it had a focus on ensuring that we are addressing the gap in low to moderate income communities as it relates to construction jobs, specifically in North St. Louis City and Southeast City, where we have a significant youth population and unemployed population that can get access to construction jobs, and working hand in hand with those apprenticeship programs and those other workforce development programs to ensure that those residents have the opportunity to enter into the workforce, specifically in the construction trades. And so as we are reviewing the disparity study, our goal is not to only address the apprentice, but also address the inequities and lack of resources for our youth and underemployed, specifically in our low to moderate income census tracts, and to ensure that they have the opportunity to participate in these programs. We also provided comment to Alderwoman Velasquez as it relates to reducing the bar down to $75,000. At this time, SODC, we fund our own compliance groups through other bond issuance fees that comes from tax abatements and tips on the major projects that ultimately support the salaries for those individuals that monitor the compliance on the workforce as well as the WMBE goals. As we seek to reduce this down to $75,000, I think we need to also be very thoughtful around the administrative compliance that's associated with it and the burden that comes with that, and finding resources to be able to increase the capacity for staff to properly manage and monitor these projects to ensure that they are living up to those goals. So for us, it's very important, again, from an administrative perspective, if this board bill was to pass, that we have the appropriate resources to monitor these projects to meet the compliance that has been laid out. So as we move forward, We would like to work hand in hand with Alderwoman Velasquez, Chairman Cohn, and others with the Board of Aldermen to ensure that every disparity that was noted within the study that was conducted by King Independent Research is addressed, but it's done in a holistic perspective and not in a one-off piecemeal approach. So that is my testimony today in our position from St. Louis Development Corporation. So I want to ensure as the economic development arm that's responsible for monitoring and managing these processes and programs, we provided that perspective today. So thank you for your time, Secretary.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Adolphus Pruitt.
Great. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you know, it is extremely difficult sometimes to testify before this board as it relates to issues like this, especially when they will overtly, and I say overtly, destroy, hamper, and bring harm, economic harm to minority businesses and their workforce. And that is clear that that's what this bill would do. If it is the intent of this committee, the sponsors, and this board to create an atmosphere where only contractors who are signatory to a union can work on city projects, this is the bill to make that happen. If that is the intent. If that is not the intent, then this bill has too many significant flaws as it is currently crafted right now. You have conducted a disparity study as required by the Supreme Court's action with Cruson versus Richmond, which established goals and things like that for city expenditure, especially as it relates to contracting. And you would force our hand and others to actually litigate and sue the city if this board bill passes, because you will be now doing something contrary to what the disparity study will require for you to do and what needs to happen to further eliminate the ongoing disparity for minority businesses and workers in the city of St. Louis. If you just go back and take one little look at the last disparity study, the last two, and look at those outcomes and look at the outcomes today, you will see that things are moving forward in the right direction. We are starting to see growth in the areas that we need to see it. And we were able to do all of that without trying to restrict, limit, or remove minority contractors who are not signatory to the union from being able to participate in city-owned projects. What I would ask you to do is a few simple things. First and foremost, the best program in the region, in the city of St. Louis, is conducted by the Metropolitan Sewer District. Go meet with MSD. Look at their numbers and compare their numbers to yours. Look at their program, but compare their program to yours. And you'll see that they meet all of the things that you're saying you want to accomplish with this bill is currently being accomplished in the city of St. Louis by the Metropolitan Sewer District based on them working with us on crafting a program that can achieve equity for minorities across the board. When folks come on here and talk about this thing about apprenticeships, you got my written comments. You don't have an apprenticeship problem. The apprenticeship problem we have is not enough minorities in the apprenticeship program that and in the unions that are able to work on these projects. The study speaks to that. It's there in black and white. Nobody who's come on here and testified to the contrary, they swore that they were going to tell the truth. Either they haven't read the study or they're blind. It just isn't a fact. The issue right now in the city of St. Louis is that we are continually trying to put up obstacles that are not necessary and not needed and have detrimental impacts on minority contractors and minority workers who are not signatory to the union. And that's a problem. And if this bill passes in the form that it is, it's going to force litigation. I appreciate your time. Again, if the intent is to make union-only contractors be the ones to participate in city-owned projects, city-funded and incentivized projects, this is the right bill. This does that. If that is not the intent, then this bill doesn't need to pass as it is currently struck. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. Next, I see Mr. Raymond. If you could raise your right hand for me.
I already did it, ma'am, but I'll do it
Oh,
again.
you did? Okay,
Yeah.
didn't see your face. Okay, go ahead and give your
Yeah.
testimony.
I'm just going to be real quick. I'm not going to go too long, but me being as a small contractor, and I think the gentleman spoke a little earlier about how the small projects within the city help this company grow. 75,000 for a lot of these what you call they call them big wig, these big GC companies is not enough money for them sport as far as being in a union to do union or prevailing wages. That this bill would kill the small contractor. Small contractor companies will be out of business within the next 60 days because a lot of them don't want to be part of the union, but they don't understand the union. They're satisfied. They're in their place as being small. As me being a small contractor to utilize the doing the city work, and I do want to say doing city work, SLDC, demolition work. The good thing about those, the city and SLDC, they pay. When it comes to these small contractors going through a lot of these GCs on some of these prevailing wage jobs, or even what you say union job, the union is not the problem. It's the GCs not paying the small contractors to pay the union, and that's what be the problem. So they don't want the headache. They don't want they satisfied in the small contracts that they get, 75,000 plus. They satisfied. But if you drop to 75,000, that it has to be prevailing wages or it has to be unionized. Just like I say, a lot of those companies will be out of business within the next 60 days. And I'll close. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We have Mr. Sean Foss. Are you planning on testifying? We can't see your face. Okay, Mr. Cohn, that is all that we have.
Okay, I thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that. And with that, Alderwoman, turn it
Great.
back over.
Sorry, go ahead, Chair.
No, just turning the floor back over to you.
Thank you, and I want to thank all the members of the public who came to speak on this important topic. I think we all know that there's some work to be done. With that, I'd like to either affirm that we can have a committee hearing before, as Chair, you mentioned, we are close to the end of session. So I'd like to either have a committee meeting next Monday or Tuesday to follow up on this bill.
I'll be happy to look at the calendar and check with the members of the committee to see when we're available to do that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to assume your commitment in hearing this, and we'll work out these items. I know that we have to raise the threshold. That's something that we've heard consistently, and do some work with this. So with that, I close my presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Alderwoman. And thank you everyone who took the time to join us this morning to discuss these important issues. I will work with the committee members and the sponsor and look at the general calendar for the Board of Aldermen and follow up with everyone on a future meeting date. I don't believe we have any other items on our agenda for today. I'm just going through that again. And it appears as though all members are present. If you could please make note of that, Madam Clerk.
Noted.
And with that, I will accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 6th. Is there a call for previous roll?
Move
Or
for
all those in favor saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.